was shaken, so what? The choice may have been mistaken, the choosing was not.
Jenna, welcome, and lovely to have you across cyberspace.
Lovely to be here.
I mean, your ears must have been burning last week, because I was down, as you were, the week before at Chichester at the Festival Theatre. I was doing a live stream with Sheila Hancock.
Oh, lovely Sheila.
And you were one of two names that she waxed lyrical about on several occasions during the interview, the other being Claire Burt.
Oh, Clara. She's my old school chum.
Really?
Yeah, Clara and I have been friends since we were 15.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, we both went to Sylvia Young's.
Yeah.
And although I went to the school from age 14, Claire didn't go to the school, but she was, I think she was a young un from probably, well, she must have been from a kid, so like a little kid, but we met when I was 15.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's brilliant.
She is, and
stunning.
She's got your quality too, which is one of normality.
Do you know what? I think a lot of that is to do with Sylvie. I think it's a lot to do with Sylvia Young, and the stage schools that get such a bad press. But actually, when I look back at it, and when I've talked to Sylvie about how it was when we were there, it was actually very bohemian. And she never used to praise you at all. It just wasn't her way.
Yeah.
But she let people just be. And looked after a lot of us in terms of giving us a route out of whatever we were in to find something different and new, and facilitate young people and their issues. She was an extraordinary.
That's really good to hear.
And that time,
yes.
Oh, it was amazing.
It's not a coincidence, clearly.
No, because I think all the people that went there are kind of special people, because they weren't. She didn't pick talent over anything. Do you know what I mean? Some people wanted to be actors, other people absolutely didn't want to be actors, but had confidence issues or were being bullied in the schools they were in. It was a very caring, small little bubble of kind of mildly eccentric, kind of brilliant kids with brilliant teachers who kind of just let you be you and find a route that suited you. A lot of people left and went on to become roofers or whatever, cab drivers, all very normal. But some of us did carry on being actors, although we never really wanted to be actors. It was just, we liked being at the school and we liked the environment we were in, and it gave us an opportunity to kind of just be. Yeah,
be real as well.
Yeah.
When I watched Flowers, Mrs. Harris, it's like she'd been waiting all her life to play that role.
I agree. And the fact that Dan Evans did that, gave her that opportunity to show everyone all her delicate choices that she makes, and how it was just all heart. I'm honestly just tearing up talking about it. When I went to see it, my friend Johnny took pictures of us at the stage door, because I just was sobbing and hugging her for about 20 minutes non-stop, because it was such a beautiful performance. And the older I get, the more I realise that being an actor is about being able to connect and show you. It's not about being somebody else. If you're playing a murderer, you go, how would I, if I was a murderer, oh my God, how would I play it? You don't play something else.
Yes, I get you.
You play you.
Yeah.
And I think when you're younger, you think that's easy, but actually it's not. It's the hardest thing. What was it? Marlon Brando. I watched a documentary about him, and he said, the easy bit is the shouting and the big dramatic scenes, and he said that bit's easy. The bit that's hard is when you're just being.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just been writing about the recording of Flowers, and it all came back to me. And I mean, it's a very special piece anyway.
Very special, very special.
And it also, I wrote quite a lot about the relationship between different kinds of music theatre, and how, you know, they can all feed into each other. So opera feeds into musicals, and musicals feed into opera, and cabaret, and all those various kinds of music theatre. But anyway, this is about you. So we've talked enough about Claire. But Sheila was saying what a lovely time she had with you on Grey Gardens.
Oh, we laughed a lot.
And I can imagine, because it's one of those extraordinary, irresistible subjects for a musical, a kind of riches to rags story that you couldn't make up. I mean, the fact that it's real, and like you, I'm sure we've all watched the documentary, which is just so extraordinary. Did you watch the documentary, or did you deliberately not?
Absolutely. I think if you've got the privilege of playing someone that actually exists, and there's a whole film in which they're starring, you watch it, don't you? You and especially with someone like Edie, she was such a character, and she had so many. I mean, it was a gift for an actor, because she's so eccentric and so many choices that she makes that nobody else would make.
Yes.
I remember speaking to someone about her accent. They said, no, it's completely made up. Because I said, where is it? They said, it's a bit of this, it's a bit of that, but it was her invention. Yeah. Like her clothes were her invention. She, obviously probably needed help psychologically. And, it was a very difficult relationship with her mum, but she loved her mother. And yes, of course I watched the film. I mean, not only is it's just a brilliant movie, but to get her mannerisms and her speech patterns, and how the rhythm of how she is, and all those things, they fed into the show. And basically Act 2 of Grey Gardens is the book part is almost word for word what's in the documentary.
Yeah. And what an inspired idea, having the same actress, i.e. you, playing Big Edie in the first act, and Little Edie in the second.
Yeah. And Tom Sutherland, I think, was so clever, because I always felt with that show, I thought, how do you do Act 1? How do you do, because you don't want this picture perfect, postcardy kind of perfect American wealthy family. There's not much you can love in that.
Well, that was the problem when I saw it. I saw it in workshop at Playwrights Horizons in New York, and it was properly produced, the whole production, but Act 1 was very much a kind of picture postcard of that grand era of the house and the people in it. And yes, the connection with Act 2 was stark, but you couldn't make a connection, if you see what I mean. I think that's what you're saying Tom managed to do.
Tom so cleverly did, because I said, how are you going to do Act 1? And also knowing it was in a fringe venue, that the budget was really small. And he said, I think we have exactly the same set. He said, the whole point with these two women is that they can't see what's in front of them ever. They don't see how awful they're being to each other, how it's going to pan out. He said, so I want them to be in the Act 2 house where it's all falling apart and there's newspaper and bird droppings everywhere. They just don't see it, but they're all in their grandeur. It's constantly kind of going, this is where it's going.
Yes.
This is where it's going. So when you land in Act 2, you go, of course.
Yeah.
That was very clever of him.
Yes, it was. It's also a piece about which Sheila could really relate to, growing old disgracefully. Yeah. And Sheila's a tough broad, and as she says what she thinks. She was incredible value, Jenna, doing the live conversation for 90 minutes. Last week. I mean, we focused on musical theatre quite a lot, but I insisted we also digress into many of the other extraordinary things she's done during her career. And she's a very, very smart woman. My goodness me.
super smart, and brilliant. You know, when you think about, she was the first female director at the RSC.
Yeah.
She was fundamental in the great companies in the early days. She writes novels. She writes memoirs. I was reading. What's his name? Kenneth Williams' diaries the other day. And she pops up in that so much. Of course. I spoke to her. I said, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know that." She went, "Oh, we were wonderful friends." She said, "But you know, he hated me one day and then he loved me the next. But he was wonderful." You could. Whenever I see Sheila, I come away going, "Oh, I'm so thrilled to have her in my life," because not only is she a brilliant friend, and she really is a brilliant friend, she's just the history of our business that she holds, and she's very, very, as you know, very funny.
She's also
completely doesn't believe, kind of goes, "Oh well, I just muddle through," and you go, "No, that's
the trick, isn't it?" I met her for 2 minutes beforehand, before we went on that stage, and I was incredibly nervous because, like many of us, I haven't done anything live, and although there was no audience for a year, and I knew it would all come back, but she said, my agent was saying that this is primarily about musical theatre. She said, "I don't really know anything about musicals," and that little girl voice, And I thought, I'm not going to be fooled by this, because the minute we switch her on, she'll be razor sharp, and she was. And as you say, Jenna, the history, knowing Jo Alton, being the first woman to play Kath in Entertaining Mr. Sloane, and the whole relationship with Kenneth, it was really extraordinary. But she was also saying about Grey Gardens, and I agree with this, that new work, well, it's not even new work, it's years old, but to get its UK premiere, it had to be put on off West End at the Southern Plains.
It always happens, doesn't it? It's always the way. It's the oddest thing, and I've been shouting about it in my little echo chamber for years. But it's hard. I just I look at smaller venues. I look at places like the Dorfman at the National, and places like the Almeida, the Donmar, which do it every now and then. That I think these are we have to take care of these shows.
Oh, we do.
And you have to build an audience. It's like the old days at the BBC when you do a comedy show. They give you 3 series because they knew that the first series would always be the audience going, "Oh, I don't know about this." The second series, and what they would do is they would film the second series, and just before the second series went out, they'd show the first series again to remind the audience. Then they give them the second series, and then that would happen for the third series. And if by the third series the audience hadn't picked up on it and grabbed it, they'd kind of let it go. But that's three years of work with shows like Only Fools and Horses.
Yes.
All of our great comedy shows, all of our great comedy performers, you were given a chance to get an audience, and that's what we don't do over here with new work. In terms of musicals,
I think it's helped in a weird sort of way. The pandemic has helped people focus on to be more inventive, more creative, and of course there's been more opportunity to sample new work and do it on streams or via Zoom or whatever. It shouldn't be the case. Those little theatres should proliferate, and they need to, because the West End is never going to accommodate new work in the way it should.
But I think as well, there's a mistake being made in the fact that I think when it comes to musicals, a lot of people who put musicals on just assume it's a way of making money, rather than thinking, I'm putting on this piece of work because it's good and it's important and it's interesting. They'll do that with Sondheim now, but you go, but there's Adam Geck. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of great writers, and you go, they've all learnt from Steve, and they've changed the form and written work which is different. But I don't understand, and this is the bit that winds me up, is if you do a musical, it's okay for it to be a 6-week run. Yeah. It doesn't have to then go into the West End and run for 20 years. If you do it on those terms, you're never going to produce anything.
No, I know, and this is...
Or you're just going to be regurgitating...
Well, this is the problem, and
which is great, but in balance, and also it doesn't move the art form on, because it is a... Excuse me, I really want to swear then, but it is an art form when it's done well with good people, and we've got the talent, we have, and the writing is there, but when it's done well, but not expected to break box office records, you don't do that with a new play, you don't do that with Carol Churchill, you don't do that with Sarah Kane. You go, this is a great piece of work, you put it on, people come and see it, go, yeah, it's wonderful, or I didn't like that, or maybe this bit could be better. But there's not the expectations of the fact that it has to then transfer to the West End, then it has to transfer to Broadway, and then there's got to be... I think we just look at it wrong. There are some shows that are going to make money, and there are some shows that are just going to do well. That's all right to do well.
Unfortunately, producers particularly, look at it from a commercial point of view, and it's always the money that messes things up in a way.
Yeah, but it needn't be. I guess that's what I'm saying. It needn't be. If someone like the Almeida said, "Oh, let's do," I don't know. I'm trying to think of something. I'm just plucking this out of the air. Lighten the Piazza.
Yeah.
And we'll do it with a chamber orchestra, which obviously these things are written to be played bigger. But if you're doing it in a small venue,
yes, of course,
let's do it smaller. If you say we're going to do this at the Almeida for 6 weeks, and it will sell out, because of course it will blimmin' sell out, because people go, oh, that's interesting, and they've got a core audience. If it's a massive hit, then fantastic. But if it's not, then that's okay. It's done its 6 weeks. Those people have seen it, and that's wonderful. It's part of programming.
I agree. It's funny. People see musicals differently, and musicals can be many, many things. And when all the elements come together, it's a very special art form.
Absolutely. That's why, Ed. That's why I don't really do commercial theatre. Yeah. Because I think I was going to do Hello Dolly, which is, I think, the only other properly commercial thing I've ever done was Guys and Dolls. Mm-hmm. But I just thought, well, I want to work with Imelda, but generally I don't do them because I like the odd thing, and I like a short run. I think it's healthy for a show. Everyone comes together, they do the work, and then it finishes. We've
got to hope that theatres like the lovely Boulevard Theatre that opened just before COVID struck, which is a beautiful... Have you been there?
No, I haven't.
It's a beautiful venue. And Paul Raymond's estate financed it in a way of giving a little something back to Soho, because they own most of Soho. And it's a gorgeous venue, but they no sooner got started when they had to shut. I was going to do a couple of Sunday afternoon conversations there with Vanessa Williams while she was in town, and Simon Callow had already been scheduled. They all fell through. And I just hope that the family, continue to invest in it so that it can reopen. And it would also be a beautiful venue for musicals and cabaret.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
I mean, let's hope. Seeing you again, I watched the live stream, Jenna, of the Sondheim celebration from Chichester.
Terrifying!
Oh, God. It must have been. And I was there right with you, all.
Oh, bless you.
And terrifying, but also it must have been extraordinary and exciting to be in front. I mean, you had an audience. You were so privileged to have an audience.
I know, it was lovely. Of course it was. It was gorgeous. It was gorgeous, and to be singing that material again.
And reunited with Dan, and, and all that going on. It was very well put together. I thought it was well selected. And worked very well, considering, because when you do live streams, it's very, very hard. For example, when you did Losing My Mind, I wanted the camera just in close-up on you, so I could see it all happening. And of course, it kept cutting away to longer shots. And I'm
that's
thinking,
the tricky thing.
Don't do that. Just I want to be there in her head.
That's the tricky thing with live streaming. I've done a couple of things like that, not with the live audience, but of course it's not reflective of theatre, is it? It's not, unless you have if you're going to film something. And I think the Sondheim, the Sondheim concert we did at Chichester was much better than other ones I've seen. That it did get sort of close at times.
They were a good team. I mean, they did a beautiful job on me and Sheila. I gather, I didn't see it, but of course it's easier when you're fixed in a position.
Well, this is it. If you're in an audience, you can see people's expressions.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the thing that you go, oh, I missed that, because I know that I would want, if you were doing, I don't know. I can't think of an example, but I think about maybe when Judi Dench in the production at the National of Little Night Music sang "Send in the Clowns." Of course, the light all around her goes down.
Yes,
you get this great light on her. You can see her expression. She's in charge and in control of every hand gesture or lack of, and therefore you're pulled into her world. And the weird thing about filming a theatrical experience is someone else is choosing to go, oh, let's get a shot of the band.
Yes.
And you go, but I don't want to look at the band at this moment. But you can't make that choice.
Yes.
And of course, you as an actor, you just kind of, you have to kind of just hope that somebody's got filming something correctly, but you have no say. And of course, if you do it, if you were doing it for telly, or properly for television or properly for film, it would be filmed in so many ways, and then the director would go away with it and piece it together of how he would or she would want it, and you don't get that either. I mean, it's a tricky. It's a tricky medium.
I think they were trying to be a little bit too varied, because for Losing My Mind, I just wanted to be in one place, close to you. I mean, you knocked it out of the park.
Thank you.
and how interesting that young Sally becomes older Sally.
Yeah, it's always been a dream of mine, that one, Ed, as well.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And I'm sure you'll do it one day.
I think that opportunity's gone now.
Oh,
sadly, it's a show that gets put on every 30 years, isn't it? I mean, it tends
to do that. I mean, the National Theatre production was sensational.
Yeah, wonderful.
And
wonderful.
It's places like the National that can do shows like that don't have to rely on commercial. Earning big bucks, because it's a subsidised theatre. Casting your mind back to the Shaftesbury and Follies all those years ago, I did an event with Dinah Rigg not so long ago before she passed, sadly, and she talked about it a lot. But I tried to sort of home in on the version that you did, because. I mean, I kind of love the show, but I didn't like the version they did. And Steve was, I once asked him, why did you agree to those changes that Cameron, wanted to put into the piece to give it a slightly more upbeat ending? And he said, well, when you're a collaborator, he said, you have to collaborate.
Yeah.
And, I didn't like it either, he said, but, we went with it because that was the feeling. But seeing the original version back again was a thrill, because it is so much better. But I mean, it was a great show, and there were great people in it, and it must have been important for you to have, grace the stage in a show like that with such a starry cast.
It was amazing. I think I was 19 when I auditioned for it, and I'd been a big Sondheim fan. You have to remember back then. I'd have to really know if this was true or not, but I'm sure that commercially in London things hadn't been amazing for Steve.
Well, they didn't.
At that time,
I don't think they'd been amazing anywhere. I mean, his shows, like always, even on Broadway, ran for a very short time.
But maybe that's why he agreed to the changes. I'm just thinking maybe that's why he thought, okay, well, maybe if in his relationship with Cameron, of thinking, let's get this show to be the success. You're quite right.
I think that's very likely, because to get a commercial producer to put on one of his pieces on such an elaborate scale.
Yeah, and it was massive, Ed.
Yeah.
It was the set was extraordinary, and there were hundreds of us in the building. We had to throw out the stage doorman. That's me and Sally Ann Triplett, who played young Phyllis. That was our dressing room. The stage doorman's room was our dressing room, and like all the dancers were on porter cabins on the roof. It was crazy, but
how amazing!
It was Eartha Kitt was out of this world.
Were you there? You were there all the way through the run, were you?
No, I didn't do it originally. I didn't even audition for it originally.
Right.
I'm probably too young, but I was. They were doing a cast change, and I think all the youngsters were leaving the show.
Yeah.
So Sally Ann Triplett, who was Margie in the original London production, they gave her, I think she understudied Phyllis, young Phyllis.
Yeah.
So they gave her young Phyllis, and then I was auditioned for young Sally.
I'd forgotten about the cast change. I knew Eartha took over from Dolores Gray.
Eartha took over from Dolores. Millie Martin came in and took over from Diana Rigg.
Yes.
Because, of course, Millie and Julia Mackenzie have this great friendship and relationship, so that was lovely. Then
side by Sondheim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was Dursley McClendon, who's sadly no longer with us, played young Ben, and Dan Massey stayed in the show.
Yeah.
And then Tony Barclay played young Ben, who then went on to do the lead in Assassins at the Donmar. You probably remember Tony from those things.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, it was here we are. I remember being in Spain. I was on holiday with Claire Burt and with Alison Raffel, who's Sylvia's other daughter, because she has Frances and Alison. And Alison works at the agency now. She's no longer an actor, but she was a great actor. We were on holiday and I had an audition, but I didn't have any girly clothes. So Claire lent me a Hobbs dress. I always remember that. So when I went for my audition, I wore the Hobbs dress and I had my suntan. And then they said, no, we would like to film you to send over to Stephen Sondheim, which of course my head was exploding because I was a massive fan.
Yeah.
And they filmed it. And then I think it was one of those odd ones. I had a last minute recall or something. Because they offered me the job on stage. I remember that on the Shaftesbury stage.
That's great.
And I think I started rehearsals the next Monday.
That's incredible. I mean, we all have our memories of where we were when we first learned about Steve. And I remember a friend bringing round this pink LP of the original cast of Company. And I remember it vividly. He said, I've just brought this back from New York. You should hear it. I was, in my 20s. And he put it on, and it was just like nothing else I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
So he is extraordinary, and you must have got to know him a lot better, obviously, when you did Sunday.
I mean, I feel very honoured. Obviously, it's one of those things, isn't it, to have worked with him quite a lot now.
Yes.
And I remember when I was in Follies, I remember going through the past door when he came to see the show when we were teching it.
Yeah.
And we had this long conversation in the past between the front of house and the backstage area. There's this little tiny little room, and we were passing each other, and I said, I have to tell you how much I love Sweeney Todd. And we had this really lovely, because he's very open, isn't he?
Well, yes, it depends what mood you catch
yes,
in,
of
mind
course.
you. But like you, I've had a sort of association with him, but it does vary a huge amount. If he's in the right mood, he's very, very open and forthcoming, and if he's in the wrong mood, he kind of contradicts everything he's ever said.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, when you did Sunday, because that relationship with you and Daniel, I mean, it was so wonderful, really wonderful, and I think because of this real thing that we've been talking about, for me, Sunday in the Park with George is all about the selfishness of the creative artist. Mm-hmm. And we know of so many examples through history, when you read biographies of writers and composers, how they shut the world out and everybody else is kind of secondary to the art. And I think the miracle of that piece is how he catches that. And not only catches that, but then in the second act, does that extraordinary wrong footing thing of taking you back all those centuries, oh my God, it's, but I mean, how was it preparing and rehearsing that piece, and how involved did he get, particularly with the New York transfer, Jenna?
Well, he was, it was strange, wasn't it? The show had happened at the Menier Chocolate Factory.
With Anna Jane Casey, wasn't it?
With Anna.
Yeah.
And I was doing Guys and Dolls, and I was in the wings, and I was chatting to Graham, Anna Jane Casey's husband, who was in the show. Mm. And I said, you got a nice, I think it was a Saturday, I said, have you got a nice weekend planned ahead? And he went, he said, I'm going to go and see Sunday in the Park with George. I said, were they doing Sunday in the Park with George? And he said, they're doing it at this place called the Chocolate Factory. I went, right. I said, who's doing it? He said, well, AJ's playing Dot and Dan Evans is playing... I went, I'm going. Okay. So on the next day, I think I saw their third preview, second preview, something like that. Myself, Ray, and Julian Ovenden and Jane Krakowski went to go and see it, and it was half empty because it was a preview. Half of the it was very technical. It was for its time.
Oh, it was.
It was very, very.
It was.
It was all this animation.
Yeah.
And half of that kept messing up, but of course it didn't matter. I cried, Ed, like it was. It was. I was making sounds that I've never made, and it mostly because I've always been a big fan of Dan Evans, and there's something I was watching him. We had one day's rehearsal for that concert that you were talking about, and no one does Sondheim like Dan. It's a masterclass because he's just in it, and he's a conduit for it. There's no attitude with it. There's no, you know what I mean? I don't mean attitude as in a bad thing. He doesn't fill it with anything. He just lets it happen.
Yeah, and he's another one. He's real, and of course, real disguises phenomenal technique as well.
Extraordinary
all
technique,
of you guys have got this technique.
Dan puts in the hours more than anybody. He's. But that's the sign of a great actor. Ray and I were talking about the other day. My other half was just saying it doesn't come easy. Making it look like you're just thinking it up, or that a thought has just occurred to you. There's a lot of work and a complete security in the work to be able to just be. And Dan does it like nobody else. So watching him, of course, everyone else was amazing, but I knew Dan better, I guess. I think because I'd seen a lot of his work at the National, where he'd worked with my other half. And when they all came out at the end, they're going, "Oh, hello, nice to see you. It's an odd piece, isn't it?" I said, "No, you have no idea." So when it came to the end of my contract in Guys and Dolls, I got a phone call asking if I'd want to play Dot, and I was like, "Well, why isn't AJ doing it?"
Yes,
because she was amazing in it. And they said, "No, AJ can't do it. It's her choice. She's pregnant, and they've been trying really hard for a family. So she was pregnant, I think, at the end of the run, or when they were talking about doing a West End transfer. She said, "Look, I'm really early days pregnant, and I've got to concentrate on that," which totally understand. And she has a beautiful, almost teenage daughter as a result. But very luckily for me, it came my way, and because I'd seen the show, I think. And I knew what effect, I knew how special it was. I kept saying, when Dan was going, "Oh, I don't know about this," but I said, "No, it works. Trust me, because I've watched it, and that bit works." Or you in that moment, don't change anything, just believe that works. So I was in the very lucky position of having seen it that matinee and completely been blown away by it, and then getting the chance to do it. And of course, I'd sung the role in my front room since I was since the album came out.
But I mean, you're very generous, Jenna. But I mean, you there was something really profound about what you did in that show. And
thank you. Well, it meant a lot to me. The show. Well, it meant a great deal to me.
It's just that heartache of that woman who is deeply in love, not just with the art, but with him. And it can never be, because she'll never have the whole of him.
But that's what I love about the show, though, isn't it? George's struggle is a very different struggle. Yeah. But it's what I say to students when talking about Marie, and of course, Dot and Marie, which actually was the part that I loved playing more than Dot. Playing the 80-year-old great grandmother. Yeah. It's all they do. That character is there to do. Both characters is to love George. Yeah. And try and unlock him. So you have Dot in Act 1 loving George, but trying to get him to be in the relationship at the same time, and that not working and letting it go. And then you've got Marie in Act 2 loving George, but trying to unlock his artistic block that he's got.
Children and art.
Yeah, children and art.
But the moment that always floors me, and it floored me again the other night watching you do Sunday in the Park with George, that number, the middle section when you come out of the pose and and you look at him and you say, "I love your eyes, George. Most of all, I love your painting." Yeah. And that in 35, 40 seconds is, it's just so moving. And you absolutely nail it.
Oh, thank
you. Every
time.
Well, absolutely nail it.
Every night, and I don't say this lightly, but every performance that I was lucky enough to do in that show, in that production, I was grateful for. And Dan and I, if we'd had, a long week, or there'd been something going on that was difficult, we would say to each other, because we'd meet behind the gauze in the middle of the stage, and we go, if one of us was feeling a little bit, "Oh gosh, this can be hard work," we go, "Do you know what? This is," and it was one of those productions, one of those shows that you will change someone in the audience, even if it's only one person. But the power of the writing was that it could gives somebody a profound evening or afternoon.
It is truly a masterpiece.
It's unsurpassed.
Really,
unsurpassed.
It really is. And even something like, well, he does this all the time. He gives you a first act, which is a masterpiece in itself, and then. But with Sunday, you don't know where the show is going. You have no idea. And, you have that phenomenal number at the end of the first act, Sunday. And everything comes together and you think, well, where can this possibly go? Yeah. I mean, I've taken people who don't know Sondheim to see that show. And they said, well, is that the end? And I said, oh, it's just the beginning. It is something else. Now, where you truly broke my heart was playing Mary in Merrily We Roll Along. Because I'd go so far as to say that, dare I say this, that this is the best thing you've ever done.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I was on my feet at when it transferred to, where did it transfer to?
Oh, the Pinter.
The Pinter, yes. That lovely tiny little theatre.
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And mainly because, again, it's about love, isn't it? It's about someone who's, this terrible, embarrassing. You almost look at the floor during that show, during your drunk scenes. Yeah,
it's horrendous, isn't it?
Oh, my God.
And do you know what? In rehearsals, I would think I was being vile, and Maria was so good. Maria Friedman, who directed it, who'd also played Mary.
Yes.
She just kept going, go further, be uglier, be...
Yes. Oh, God, she's right.
It's got to be... She said it's got to be awful.
So embarrassing. Yes, it's got to be. Because then, I mean, and you feel the audience sort of looking at the floor. It's absolutely true.
But we all know those women, don't we? We all know them. Yeah. We've all seen them. We, or they're in our family. That person that gets the drinks down their neck and is horrendous. But so, I mean, you can't fight it because they'll kill you with a one-liner because they're so bright, but burning with rage. But it all comes from a place of absolute insecurity and hurt and pain.
Of course.
Absolutely. She's a brilliant character.
Oh, isn't she just?
Oh, I'm so glad I got to play because I auditioned. I talked to Dad about this. I auditioned for the Donmar production.
Yes.
That
was Grandage, wasn't it?
Grandage's production, and I didn't get it, and it kind of broke my heart. Again, a bit like Follies. You go, oh, I'll never get that opportunity again because these shows don't come along that often. But when I'd heard through Michael Xavier, I was working on something with Michael. He went, oh, I'm auditioning for Merrily We Roll Along. I said, where are they doing that? Who's doing that? He said, Maria Friedman's directing it. I went, really, where? Yeah. He said, at the Menier Chocolate Factory. Yeah. Oh. I said, oh, right, okay. And he said, yeah, they're going for older people. I went, right. And I remember thinking, oh, dare I?
Oh, yes.
Dare I ring Maria and say, can I come in?
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, do you know what? All she can say is no. Yeah. So I texted her. I said, look, I just always want to play the part. Have you cast it yet? If you haven't, can I come in? Yeah. And she gracefully said, absolutely come in. And, she took a long time casting that show.
Oh, she got it really right, didn't she?
She wanted
really
the right
got it
people.
Right.
And good on her, because I think she really did, I think the casting was brilliant.
It was a fabulous cast. Funny enough, I did one of my I did a series of shows where you did one of them at Charing Cross, but we moved over to Pizza Express, and and that's where the title Comparing Notes came from. And Damien Humbley did one of them. And Mark Umbers was in the audience, and I met him afterwards. What a charming man
he is.
He's
gorgeous, Mark.
Isn't he just a charming... And so sort of shy and modest and, all that kind of, And I said, well, you need to do one of these. And he said, oh, gosh, I don't think I could do one of these. He said, talk about myself? Gosh, that's tricky,
He's a reluctant one, is Mark. But Such a talent.
Well, and that cast just came together. And you know, as always with that show, when in that final scene, when they're all sat there and you see the beginnings of the relationships in that wonderful, clear-eyed, innocent way, it just breaks your heart.
Of course it does.
It's a staggering piece. Again,
in
why
the,
wasn't
in the
it a
way
success?
that only Steve can do, in the way that only he can do. You know, there's no one else that trusts. I think as well that in the smallest thing, it can be so powerful. Like the way to end the show with 3 people sitting on a roof watching Sputnik.
Yeah,
you know, and then that lovely little touch when the girl comes up the stairs, who's the woman that Damien ends up marrying that you never see, but he talks about, and she comes up and then disappears because she's too shy. And it's just, you know, it's nothing and it's everything. Beautiful writing. Again, beautiful writing. And, you know, Sondheim picks his collaborators so well, and it really is a collaboration.
Have you ever seen that documentary, the best worst thing that ever happened to?
Do you know what? I haven't.
Oh, you must see it. You must.
I know Lonnie really well.
Yeah.
But he wasn't it on Netflix or something?
Yes, and it's sort of. I have Netflix on my computer because I can't. Because I've got a sort of a first generation TV, so I have to have it on my computer. But I got it specifically to watch that.
Yeah, he sent me a trailer for it when he was putting it together. Not a trailer, a kind of little excerpt, and there was a bit which you go, oh my God! I think it was at the back of the dress or something, and all you could hear and see were people just walking out and chairs going up.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
You know, I just sat there and went, oh, God. Well, but it's that thing, isn't it? You know, Steve says about it, you know, they were the team, him and Hal Prince, you know, they were just riding this extraordinary wave of they'd hit a seam of gold, hadn't they?
Well, they had, but I did an interview with Hal Prince when I was preparing a big 3-part podcast for Steve's 80th.
Oh, right.
And I assembled as many people as I could, courtesy of Joseph Weinbergers, who licensed his stuff as a gift for him.
Oh, wow.
And I managed to meet Steve, to meet Hal in New York. It's the only time I've ever met him. And we talked about Merrily, and he said he takes full responsibility for the failure of the show. He said, I had this idea about people being in T-shirts with their name on it and it being like a rehearsal, almost, the way it was presented. He said, but I kind of lost my nerve and it ended up half-baked. And he said, and I didn't really find a way to make it work. And he said, I blame myself because there's nothing wrong with the piece. And there really isn't anything wrong.
No, there isn't anything wrong with the piece.
So isn't that interesting?
But again, you can kind of see why he did what he was doing. For the time, that was kind of an interesting take, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than doing it literally, that you see them in a house, you know, it's all kind of constructed. And like you say, you have got the T-shirts with the names on it. And they were all kind of. I get the idea, and maybe it was just ahead of its time.
Well, I think it could well have been, because you see, Broadway at that time expected lavish. It expected, you know, something in a musical, particularly. It's so interesting. We were talking about Richard Taylor earlier on Flowers for Mrs. Harris. His piece, The Go-Between, which is also a wonderful piece. Michael Crawford, you know, wanted to do it, and it went into the West End because of Michael Crawford, and died a death because partly it was just not what West End musicals are about. Yeah. And it had a piano on stage, no band. It was through composed in a different way from the expectations of people, and nobody understood it, and it was out of place. I mean, it should have been done at, you know, at the Menier or somewhere like that, you know. So expectations of commercial audiences are very different. We need to educate them to expect the unexpected, I think.
Yeah, and
don't you think?
Oh, totally. But it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. You know, it's just that there's room for everything, and I just don't understand. I don't understand how with plays you can go. Oh well, you know, we need to fill lots of bums on seats, so you can pick a commercially tried and tested play. But generally, with plays, you have to kind of suck it and see, put it on.
Of course,
there's
I get
downstairs. Upstairs at the Royal Court. That's an interesting play. Let's work on it a bit more, and then it goes to the main house at the Royal Court. Then possibly has a 10-week run in the West End. That's a massive success.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
With musicals, we don't.
No, expectations
are
quite different, and it's partly because people have so little experience of what musicals can be.
Yeah.
You know,
and
that's the problem.
They're bloody hard. It's, you know, I think every time I've done a show with an actor that's never done a musical before, they can't kind of get their head around how hard it is.
Yeah.
Because it looks, I mean, like we've been saying, everything that looks easy is actually very hard. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And of course, you go and see something like, I don't know, 42nd Street, and it looks like everyone's having the best time. But they've been drilled.
Yes.
You know, there's blisters, there's blood, someone's gone home after a full day's rehearsal and ruined their kitchen floor, practicing to make it look effortless.
Absolutely.
Effortless, like it's just, whoa, here I am just doing my thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, brilliant actor said to me one time, he said, I've just realised, you know, and he's done virtually all the leads at the RSC, you know, he's one of those actors. And he said, I have had my head up my arse for the past 20 years. Because there's no time to sit around and go, oh, how would I feel? You've got to make those choices. You have those discussions with the director, but you've got to pin your colours to the mast pretty quick and be prepared to make a complete tit of yourself in front of everybody very quick. You don't sit around the table for 6 weeks discussing it, then maybe have a closed rehearsal where you pootle around, which plays do, and they do, and then gradually more people are let in the room and you do more scenes stuck together. With a musical, you're doing everything at once.
A very well-known musical theatre performer said to me recently, the people who write musicals don't have to do them. And I think that sums it up. Let's just talk a little bit about, before we move on to round this up, of one of those other successes of Steve's, and that is Jason Robert Brown. I mean, you did his first produced show, Songs for a New World. I saw you do it at the St James Theatre before it changed its name, with Cynthia Erivo. We both had the experience of Cynthia Erivo. My goodness me, she's always known where she was going, hasn't she? My goodness me.
Fearless.
Yeah, I mean, that extraordinary focus, laser focus. And you know, she was a finalist in Sondheim Student Performer of the Year. And I put her through to the final. She sang The Miller's Son.
Okay.
And I put her through to the final, and I remember thinking, she's got huge potential, this girl, but it's not there yet. And she didn't even get placed in the final. So it wasn't there yet. And then she did The Colour Purple. And suddenly this child grew into this woman before your very eyes. My goodness me.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Oh,
it's
God.
Amazing.
So Jason Robert Brown, Bridges of Madison County.
The Bridges of Madison County.
Which, I mean, gosh, there's a masterpiece in that, in the first, right at the beginning of the show, To Build a Home.
Oh, isn't it brilliant?
Isn't it brilliant? My goodness me. I mean, I do think Jason Robert is a genius, but a difficult man. And, rubs a lot of people up the wrong way, but my goodness, the work is extraordinary.
He is an extraordinary being. He really is. But I don't know about difficult. It's funny, isn't it?
He's driven. He's driven.
Yeah. I think people often because I get told quite a lot about people I'm going to work with. Oh, he's difficult. She's difficult. And what I always find out is just that those people know what they want.
Well, I generally agree with you. I've only met Jason around once, and he was very charming, and we respond to each other on Twitter and stuff like that. But I've come into contact with so many people who've been upset by him. I think that's the thing. I think if you forget that everybody's vulnerable in this business, then you're on a hiding to nowhere, because as Sheila said to me last week, she said, in my experience, ego is all about insecurity, nothing else.
Always. Yeah. You have to connect to that. You have to. Some people are really good at going, I'm really terrified, actually. Some people can really do that. I think I'm one of those people that can do that, and I feel lucky that I can, that I'm not ashamed to go, I don't know what I'm doing in this moment, or this feels really shit, and I don't quite know why I'm not, but I don't believe it. And I often will do that in a rehearsal. But there are other people that can't say that. It's just not in their makeup. So how it comes out is the walls go up, and some as someone who's around someone like that, you might get some odd vibes, but generally it's because they're frightened.
Well, the difference,
they feel exposed, and they don't have a solution to a problem. You have to just, I do.
Well, the difference,
not take it personally.
Well, exactly. Well, the difference with you is that if you're not feeling it, we won't feel it, and one of your qualities, and I talked about it in Merrily and Sunday, but also in Bridges of Madison County in the final scene, one of your qualities is that you are real and you share with us what you are feeling. And that's why it was so moving when she reads the letter at the end of
it's
Bridges.
So heartbreaking, isn't it?
Well, it is.
It's heartbreaking.
But if you try to act that, it doesn't work, No,
you got. But the thing is, the gorgeous thing, and this is why theatre, Ed, is so beautiful, and nothing touches it. It's been a hard year for us people that have made a choice to commit a life to theatre, because I never thought we'd be in a position where we can't do it, or you can't tell a story with two people in a room. I mean, the joy of it, we'll get back to that. We will get back to that. I know we will. But that's why I love doing it, as opposed, I like film, it's fine. I like doing telly, it's all right. But the
EastEnders,
absolutely fine.
Yeah,
it's got me through the last year, so I'm grateful.
Absolutely.
But there's nothing like, especially if you're lucky enough to play a really good character, like Francesca in that show. You walk on stage, you as an actor, with all the work that you've done with the director and the costume designer, and with the lighting designer and the sound designer, all those decisions that you've all made together, you as the actor walk onto a bare stage and tell a story. And that, what an opportunity you have, a 6-minute aria really to tell your story, and then the story happens, and then you get this 5 minutes at the end where you close and finish the story. You're in charge of it as the actor, and it's it's a great privilege to be able to do that. But you can't not be, if you're in it, you can't not be moved or feel what she's feeling, because you're lucky, you're not filling in gaps, you're in real time experiencing it, and in the joys of doing anything at the chocolate factory, which I love being so close to an audience. I love it.
Yes.
I love it when I can
That's
hear
interesting.
them.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. I love it when I can see them. If you're singing a song like Building a Home, I would look at everyone because I want them to go. I wanted to let them go. You're all right. Here we are. This is my story. This is where I'm going to tell you about this place, and I love this place, and this happened, and it was horrible. And here I am building a home. The fact that I can look in people's eyes and bring them with me, there's no greater thrill.
Well, there's an intimacy about that show anyway, isn't there?
Yeah.
That is,
and it was glorious, and lovely Ed, who I played opposite, was so beautiful, and Trevor, who I'd never worked with, Trevor Nunn.
Interesting. Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, I really we we had our moments, me and Trevor, but that's all right. We both wanted the same thing.
Yes.
Again, that's part of the creative process. It's not always an easy ride, but as long as you all get to the destination at the same time and all with the correct bags on the horse, which we did with that show. But yeah, we had our moments, me and Trevor.
What those moments, were they to do with just basic disagreements about what the character was doing or thinking?
Well, it's little things. It was little things like he's very quick to go, this bit doesn't work, let's get rid of it, let's take that section of music out. I always feel as an actor, especially with someone like Jason, especially with someone like Steve, because I know how hard they work to put that bit of, there might not be any lyric to that 6 bars, but it's there for a purpose. We've got to find a way of making that work, and I can feel it. I don't know, I can't say what it is because I'm not that type of an actor. I know when something is right because I can feel that it's right. And our little disagreements were perhaps to do with trying to preserve some of the writer's intention.
Right. Yeah,
But other things he would fight me on, and he was absolutely right about that made an enormous difference. Like I remember I was doing early like first putting a scene up, and I'd be and he went, no, darling, Francesca must always be about love. She must never raise her voice. She's not a fishwife. She's and I remember thinking that there was a part of me that thought, you don't, I know you're not a woman.
Yes.
Don't tell me what I can and can't do. But actually, he was bang on with that, because the more I kind of thought, I'm going to try that. I'm going to sit with that for a couple of weeks and let's see. The more it she doesn't hate her husband. She loves him. She loves her life. There's nothing she wants to change. This man has come and she loves him too. Yeah. It's not an either or. It's all. She loves them all, but one of them has to go, and it's not going to be her family. So that kind of thing that I wouldn't, if I was left to my own devices, I wouldn't have locked into that. It was brilliant direction, and Trevor's, scenically how he puts things together, how he blends things together. I mean, we had a difficult
huge
set
experience
on that show.
Yeah.
And he made it work as well as it was so noisy in the first preview. I couldn't cope. I didn't say anything because I thought that's a first preview.
Yes.
But he was on it like a rat up a drain pipe. So we can't have them. I can't hear that. I can't have that. And you could see them all going, "Oh, really? It's fine, isn't it?" And he wouldn't have it.
That's great. Yeah.
So he's brilliant. He was brilliant. I loved working with him.
It's a beautiful piece, I think, and I'm so glad you did it, because I can't think of anybody else who would have landed it in the way you did.
Ed, do you know what? David Barney talked to me about it about 2 years before we did it, and I Googled it. I'd heard the album, and I knew that it was the brilliant
for you.
Kelly. No, I knew it was Kelly O'Hara, and I listened to it, and it was so her singing. I mean, she's got the most extraordinary voice. I thought, I can't sing like that. So a part of me shut down on that. Then I saw pictures of her wandering around in a lovely dress, looking very feminine, and then I realised an Italian accent, and I rang David up and said, David, I can't do it. I can't be sexy, lady, feminine. It's not me. And singing all, oh, it's not me.
That's exactly what it's not about, But
it took me 2 years. I kept listening to the album. Became one of those albums that I put on in the car on my commuting to do fun home, and I kept coming back to the music and going, God, it's so beautiful, and trying to sing along with it. I was sobbing, and I thought, do you know what, Jenna?
Just do it.
Do it.
Yes.
Stop putting blocks.
Put your own stamp on it. Yes, exactly.
You can be feminine.
Yes.
You can be attractive in your own way. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
That's not. You can't judge yourself like that. So I'm so glad I did.
But
it, I think it was my last hurrah that area.
You do make good choices, though, Jenna. I mean, Fun Home you've mentioned. You are flying the flag for contemporary work. Because these pieces are all important pieces that will have a future. Yeah,
they will have a future, and they'll get done again and again and again.
Because they're
special. They're good, because the writing is good.
Yes, exactly.
It's good, and they're brilliant, quiet little stories. They're always my favourite. The quiet stories.
Anybody else? Any other bucket roles on your horizon, or composers and people whose work you want to do more of? I mean, you must have a little list somewhere of things you covet and would love to do.
Oh, there's so many things I'd love to do. There's so many things I'd love to do. It's just running out of time, isn't it? And hopefully I'll be able to do a few more of them. And it's funny as well with this whole lockdown thing and COVID. As an actress of a certain age, I keep saying to Ray, my other half, I've got limited time really. I'm as a woman, it gets harder anyway. I mean, I think things are changing, but I think maybe for generations after me, they'll reap the benefit of it.
Things are changing. You look at Sheila, and I said to her, acting is probably the only profession where the roles in many ways do get more interesting as you get older, or there at least are roles for you. You're not written off in this ageist world we live in. I mean, it is an ageist world in many respects, but in the theatre, we're kind of ageless.
No, I hear you.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, I do. I get that. It's just, I guess when I was at the RSC all those years ago, I remember having that moment of, I think I did 7 plays there, and I used to often sit there and go, wow, this cast, there's 35 of us in this cast, in this particular play, and 3 women talk. And that has really stuck with me. It wasn't like a political thought. I just remember thinking, there just aren't many parts for women, are there? It kind of, and maybe that's why I gravitate towards doing musicals, and why I think so many female performers and actors love Steve Sondheim's work is that he writes extraordinary women.
Yes.
So often with musicals, you're either an angel or a whore. I remember having that conversation with Cameron Mackintosh when I was probably 21.
Yeah.
That's in a lot of the musical theatre canon.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a slut or an angel. That's it. Yet someone like Sondheim will write someone who's funny, broken, strong. You get to play with all the colours in the paint palette. He gives you every opportunity. They're rich. You never get to the bottom of them.
Yeah.
They're when I did Guys and Dolls, I remember talking to Dougie Hodge, who was playing, what's the character?
Nathan
Detroit.
Yeah.
And we did, it was a long run, that was one of the longest runs of anything I'd ever done. 6 months we did, us, the core four. And I said, are you looking forward to leaving? And he went, yeah. He said, because, these characters, he said, I've loved it. He said, but these characters, he said, there's no subtext. And I went, oh, God, yeah. And he went, they mean what they say,
yeah.
they say what they mean.
Yes.
He said, so once you've kind of learnt it and found the journey,
yeah.
He said, you can't, he said, it would be wrong of you to put anything else on it. That's what it is. That is it.
But you see, but because musicals have evolved in the way they have, that's changing.
Oh, completely. And, it starts with Carousel and with Oklahoma, with all those great book musicals.
Yeah. The great
suddenly
ones.
The great ones, yeah. You suddenly go, here are rich characters, here's a brilliant play with the wonderful addition of music, and they are. Anyway, I'm rabbiting on. You know what I mean.
Well,
I'm very grateful. I am, and I can't wait for a day to be back in a theatre with the brilliant people that work in theatre, doing what we love.
And you will be. Honor. I mean, it's been the most extraordinary year because in some ways it has flashed by. And in other ways, it's felt like a decade. It's the two things at the same time.
That there are other things. I was saying to a friend of mine the other day. My daughter, who's 11, has loved this year because Mummy's been home.
Oh, yeah.
And she hasn't said it in a way that is like, oh, I never see you. But she said it's been really lovely having you around all the time because we've got really close as a family. And you go, that's. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for just being able to actually take a breather for a bit.
Exactly, and it's helped us reevaluate,
absolutely,
the things that are important to us. Because like all of us in this business, I was at shows every night, and this, that, and the other, and again, my partner was at home very often, and it's enabled us to stop.
Yeah.
And think, oh gosh, how exciting it is to go out occasionally for breakfast. Or, the little things have thrilled me so much.
And I keep thinking to myself as well, the writing that must be happening.
Yes.
I emailed the brilliant Robert Icke. I said, I hope you're writing. He didn't respond. He responded to my text. But he didn't tell me whether he was writing something. Yeah. But I keep thinking about all our brilliant artists that are going, do you know what? I've got to finish that play.
We may come out of this period with a whole rich vein of new material.
I'm sure we will. Can't wait to see it and watch it and hopefully be a part of some of it.
Yeah. Well, bless you, Jenna. It's been a pleasure, and
Ed, it's always lovely.
We could talk for hours, and we do.
Exactly. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure, my darling.
And the belong.